Okay, now, we are competing with Google. And incidentally, did you all get the handout? All right, the handout is in the back, and what it is, this is actually a web page, and at the top of the handout, you will see the address for the web page, which means that at your leisure, you can go back to that website and simply click your way through and explore some of the interesting places that I'm steering you to. We are competing with Google. And I'd like to first start by talking about some of the advantages that we have over Google. What do we do that even the most sophisticated collection of algorithms cannot do? Well, first of all, there is the fact that we are human beings. An awful lot of our users still crave the human contact. And secondly, because we are human beings, we have a heck of a lot better chance than any algorithm does of getting the patron to the need that exists behind whatever they might key into a search engine. We also bring to these transactions a gut-deep understanding of the structure of information. Google makes no distinction between good information, bad information, and God knows, incomplete information, okay? We, on the other hand, have constructed mental topographical maps of the information landscape. So, and on our topographical maps, you will see Mount Library of Congress, Mount National Institutes of Health and National Library of Medicine, the various sites that we know as rich and deep purveyors of trusted information. We bring to the reference transaction nasty, suspicious minds, okay? Which is to say, we know and believe sincerely that all people are created equal and deserve equal quality library service. We do not believe that all information is created equal. And so we tend to distrust things that we have this really, really sensitive nose for the smell of fish, okay? Now, let's talk about, first of all, the future of reference, I think, goes in two directions. One is services to unsophisticated users, and the other is highly sophisticated services for sophisticated, demanding users, who are likely to be the sorts of people who are actually community leaders, business leaders, and so on, who we really want to have on our side. First of all, services to unsophisticated users, they are not going away anytime soon. You already know that. How many people do you have that come to your library whose fundamental attitude is, I knew how to use the card catalog. You took it away from me, and you will now do all of my looking up for me, thank you. Okay? This is not going to change until they all die off. But according to the latest Pew study on digital divisions, 68% of American adults use the internet. That's up from 63%, but that means 32% of American adults do not go online, whether by choice or not. And so we are still dealing with these, and I am hearing from reference librarians that yes, you are still just as busy as you ever were. You just have a hard time convincing the techno geeks of that. We do serious hand-holding, okay? And we do one-on-one training of users on how to use the internet and on how to use various kinds of reference sources to when they want to learn how to explore it on their own. We are one-on-one showing them how to master genealogical searching and so on. I had a colleague who was the best handholder in the world, and it absolutely drove me nuts because she would sit there and spend half an hour with somebody, and that person just adored her, okay? Everyone she ever dealt with adored her. While she was spending half an hour holding this person's hand, people were lining up at the reference desk, waiting for somebody to notice them. Training, and that's formal and informal, and I really want to encourage you to do one thing. You in the public libraries tend to do reference as pulling rabbits out of hats, okay? Oh, you want that? Here's the answer. Pull out the rabbit, okay? Do yourself and your patrons a favor and show them how you found the rabbit, okay? While you are walking to the reference source that you're going to point them to, while you are clicking your way to the reference source, whatever it may be, let them in on the mental processes that are leading you to that source. I'm taking you here because you know this is the best source of information for consumers. Medline Plus is really the best place you want to go. It is absolutely authoritative and it's designed for consumers, etc. You know, fill in the blanks for them so that they understand the logic behind you pulling that particular rabbit out of that particular hat. Mobile reference is part of our future. Now, how many of you are in libraries, wireless libraries, and already walk around and do reference with wearing headsets? Okay. And they do, Cerritos Library does that, Denver Public Library, a whole lot of libraries are getting into that. You all, I'm sure, are familiar with the fact that you can't walk out away from your desk to pick up something without somebody grabbing you and saying, could you help me, you know? They won't come to the desk, but if you're out there, they're going to grab you, okay? So there is much to be said for being mobile within the library to offer your services. But there are other ways in which we can take reference service to where our patrons are. In the Flushing Public Library, they actually run a kiosk at the subway station. Okay. Dormitories. Several universities have live-in librarians within the dormitories. Not a job I'd like to do, but I had enough hormones when my son was growing up. We have librarians stationed within academic departments in universities. Instead of just a faculty liaison, you have a faculty liaison who actually has an office in that department and works with the faculty on developing curriculum materials, websites, finding the information resources to help them build reading lists and everything for their courses, and even helping them construct their web pages. We had a wonderful example of going to where the users were during Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita. The work that was done by Houston Public Library, Harris County Public Library, all of these other places where evacuation shelters were set up. Of course, you know that FEMA, in an act of real brilliance for a community that had no power and no computers and no phone service made the 800 line and download from the internet the only way that you could apply for FEMA assistance. So the librarians in these towns took computers to the libraries, and again, serious hand-holding, because they had to help these people download those forms from the internet and help them fill them out, okay? Special event reference. Do you all know Jessamine West, at least by reputation? Okay, Jessamine is our wonderful radical librarian who does librarian.net. She has done reference service at Burning Man. She also did it on the street during the demonstrations in Seattle on the World Trade Organization several years ago. Similarly, a group called Radical Reference did reference service at the Republican National Convention, reference service cum protest. They do call it radical reference, you know. We have librarians moving directly into courseware, and this makes a great deal of sense. John Shank at one of the University of Pennsylvania campuses, or Pennsylvania State University, I'm not clear, actually has the title of, he is actually in charge of instructional computing at the university, which is to say, he's not just a librarian, he is the one who teaches the faculty how to use courseware. He is the one who also doles out grants for faculty to develop courseware, which puts them in a really wonderful position to tell them about why they should incorporate library resources into their programming. And here's something that's going to show you a whole bunch of ways that libraries are moving reference service directly to where the users are. Reference in advance through your website. And this is something I really want to recommend to you. I'm going to tell you a couple of horror stories first, okay? I come from Iowa. I live in Davenport, Iowa, which is right on the Mississippi River. You know how you look at a map and Iowa has this big bump in the middle, okay? My son always, when people say where's Davenport, he says it's the right nostril of Iowa. Okay, now, between Iowa and Illinois, we have the Arsenal Island, Rock Island Arsenal. During the base reallocation and closing commissions, the Arsenal was endangered, and initial decision was significantly against it. On the day that the first list of potential base closures was announced, I looked at the websites of all of the libraries on both sides of the river, and none of them had posted a set of resource links to the document itself or to background information on BRAC. And it's like, excuse me, now maybe you think that people are going to go elsewhere and not to the library to look for this information. You may be right. But you are, for the people who did go to the library to look for that information, guaranteeing that they will not go back to the library again looking for important community information. Similarly, this is the 25th year anniversary of the Mount St. Helens eruption. And I went and looked at the websites of libraries within about a 100-mile radius of Mount St. Helens. Only 2 of those libraries had materials on the 25th year anniversary. This is a blown opportunity. When you have a major community event, a major community anniversary, A major community celebration. Again, our libraries blew it on things like the Scott County Fair, held in Davenport. They blew it on the John Deere Classic, which is held in the whole Quad Cities region. Indianapolis really did not have anything up over Labor Day weekend. The public library did not have anything up on their website on the Indianapolis 500. You are part of your community. So you need to take this occasion to prove that you really are the community resource of information, and you are one with your community's goals and aspirations. We have a future in answering the ungoogleable. Nice little piece I just found here. Recently, search engines in Trivial Pursuit. Apparently, search engines can't play Trivial Pursuit very well. They did searches and pitted them, Google and Yahoo and MSN search, against some services like Answers.com and Ask.com, which are themselves not as good as we are. And what they found is Google got 8 out of 20, Yahoo 5 out of 20, MSN 2 out of 20. Okay. I, for one, tend to ask ungoogleable questions. And so I think of things like, when I'm out gardening, I especially think of ungoogleable questions like, did crabgrass co-evolve with power mowers? Okay? Did the mere fact that we introduce something that cuts off things that stand up straight actually encourage the development and takeover of the world by crabgrass, which manages to sneak along underneath it? Okay? You really cannot answer that in Google. You'd actually have some problems answering it even in a biology databases, which is really where this goes. You'd have some problem answering that because, you know, weeds is not a proper biological search term. To biologists, all life forms are created equal and they don't mind crabgrass, apparently. So in fact, what tends to happen is, first of all, we do think sideways, which means we are capable of thinking of all kinds of alternative terminology that you can use to get into databases and try to tweak that information out of it, pry it loose from wherever it's hiding. But when in doubt, what we do is we all have our little private cache of experts that we know and call on. This is why I always urge people, because I know a whole set of experts that I call on to ask them questions, but I've got new young librarians. They don't know all of these experts that I have picked up over time after spending 22 years at the university. I know who knows what, you know? Catalog your experts, okay? Put your range of expertise on a little database that you all can share and draw on so you know who to go to when you have one of those ungoogleable questions. We do more effective Googling simply because we know techniques for tweaking any of these search engines. I was reviewing a book a while back that was clearly written sometime, the events in the story clearly took place sometime in the 1960s, but I really could not pin it down any more than that. But one thing that happened in the book was there was a baseball game between the Minnesota Twins and the New York Yankees. They did give the names of the Yankee players. Okay, so I put in Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, and I got a range that could have been any place from 1959 to 1967, that both of those were on the Yankees. Then I added Clete Boyer, that narrowed the range. Then I added Elston Howard, that narrowed it still further. And then I added Whitey Ford, and bingo, there's only 1 year, 1965, in which all of those players coexisted on the New York Yankees, okay? The power of and, we understand that. Google, of course, is the ultimate resource for our faulty memories. Mine is getting faultier all the time. I have these senior moments where I can remember all kinds of things about a book except the title and the author, you know? And so I plug in what I do happen to remember, which of course is always the strange little things. Well, that's one thing that's nice about Google, because a keyword index to all of the strange little things that do strike us communally, okay? So I fed in orchids and Archie and Fritz. And I pulled up a tribute site to Nero Wolfe. Ah, yes, that's what I wanted, okay? I could have added omelets. I mean, you remember odd little things, you know? Providing community information and referral service. Now, why should any city pay the expense of a separate information and referral service to get people to local community information to know which welfare organizations they need to go to for which kinds of services, when they already have a perfectly good functioning library reference staff? All they would need to do is pay us more money, and we could happily take over that function. They don't need a separate information and referral service. Many libraries have actually already created the base for that by creating community information databases. And if you've never seen the Queensborough Public Library's database, I really recommend it highly to your attention. Queensborough Public Library serves people from 127 countries, speaking 112 different languages, and they have gone out and identified every single local organization that is serving every single one of those nationalities, okay? Now, let's talk about services for sophisticated users, or references if somebody's paying $200 an hour for your time and your results. Do you all know Mary Ellen Bates? Have you heard her speak? She is one, you want her at a conference sometime. If you ever have a chance to hear her at a conference, put that onto your schedule. No event that competes with it is going to be as valuable for you. Mary Ellen is an independent information professional, and she does charge lots and lots of money for her service. I just want to walk you through the way that Mary Ellen thinks. Okay, I just finished a series of workshops and presentations at the Special Libraries Association conferences. One of the issues that often gets the most interest is looking beyond search engines to find the best information. So I thought it would be interesting to write out my thought process and search strategies. A client's project that involved finding information on trends in the UK market for internet phones, otherwise known as VoIP. Here are the steps I took. I threw VoIP into a couple of search engines just to see what alternative terms showed up. So having picked up new terminology, I reviewed the sponsored links. Now, we wouldn't do that normally, but she did it because, assuming that if a company paid to have its ad appear for the search term, it might have relevant content. Sure enough, I found links to a white paper and ordered it. I went to the Wikipedia and how stuff works to actually find out more about the basic technology behind this and to get good links to reference sources. Checked a couple of the human compiled web directories especially one for Europe and UK because she's doing this for a UK client. Ran a quick search in a couple of search engines which pointed me to an industry magazine. Okay. That reminded me of BitPipe, which allows me to search for white papers. Checked out a few of the news sites to find out what's late breaking on it. Wandered over to ZDNet and CNET for reviews of various VoIP providers and product comparisons and tutorials and customer ratings. I looked at what users were saying about VoIP by going into the blog search engines and also from searching blog entries, I found a pointer to a European Union study. I searched the European Patent Office, and finally I went to Factiva. Okay. What Mary Ellen understands and what any reference librarian understands is that everything has information content. You use all of it that directly applies. I don't know if you all read an article that I wrote several years back for Searcher called My Rules of Information. And my rule number 1 is go where it is. And my rule number 1 is go where it is. And again, we have that mental topographical map that we have constructed of the information universe. We say to ourselves, who would be interested in this topic? Who would have compiled research on it? And we go directly there. We say, oh, there's got to be something at the National Library of Medicine. There's got to be something at the Environmental Protection Administration, even now. There is still legacy stuff. Even things like cartoons and ads have informational content. When one of the questions that I always got at the university was from people who were doing costumes for plays. I would go to the magazines from the time period, and we would look through the ads. I started a collection of old Sears and Penny's and Ward's catalogs at the library because the ads are going to go for the more upscale clothing and things of the period, but Sears and Penny's are going to get, well, people like us who can't afford the upscale stuff, okay? Even cartoons have informational value. Go to Cartoon Bank and do a search on a topic. And the reason, and I've actually written about this before, is that cartoons are only funny if you understand the context. Thank you. I'm already running behind. And they print a cartoon only when they're pretty sure that everybody is going to get the joke. So you can actually track people's reactions to technology by going through the New Yorker Cartoon Bank and following it up through time. We personalize information. Now that's linguistically, as I said, Queensborough is dealing with 112 different languages in its service area. LA, you've got 137 languages. Bay Area, 112. San Diego, 110. Okay. We match our services to the language level of the people we're dealing with. We talk differently to the junior high student than we do to the professor, than we do to the housewife. We match sophistication level with the kinds of needs that they have. We match their degree of interest because, of course, we have the capability of just going on and on and on, but eventually we have to stop when their eyes glaze over. And we tailor our results to the need that is behind the information request. Mining the information is one of the things we're going to want to do. And I want to show you some interesting things here. These are things that were not necessarily done by librarians, but they're the kinds of things that we could do, and I'm going to just pull some of them up, although not a PDF one. Okay, what is the effect of New York Times Select on its influence? Okay, at the left, you have Krugman's column, Thomas Friedman's column, and David Brooks's column. And then right there in the middle, you have the point at which those all went behind the paid subscription firewall. Jack Krugman, Thomas Friedman, and David Brooks all became significantly less influential as soon as people could not provide links to their stuff or could not get it for free. Look at the data that's available at a place like Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble in terms of their recommendation systems. Somebody went in and looked at a bunch of political books based on who's recommending what. When you get to the people who bought this also bought this. What you find out is that you have two communities of people who are not reading the same things at all. This is an utterly polarized reading communities with just these few books in the middle that are being read by both segments. So the kinds of things that you can do with the kinds of data sets that are available, we can go directly to the data sets and mine them. What I am saying is think more broadly about the kind of things that exist as data sets. They may not be the classical kind of data sets that we would be thinking of, like census information, American Fact Finder, time series, and so on. There's just data sets all over the place waiting to be exploited. Contextualizing information. We illuminate factoids, okay? Now, one of the places that I like to go is governing. And one of the features on governing is the daily digit. Increase in the average cost of an apartment in Seattle over the past 2 years, 58.69%. Pounds of explosives reported as stolen from state and local law enforcement storage magazines during a 10-year period ending in December 2004, etc. Number of applicants for the job of Dallas fire chief since the previous fire chief resigned, etc. Now, the point is that has zero information content by itself. All of that stuff is devoid of context that allows you to assign any meaning to that information. We are here to provide context for that. Now, some of the kinds of context we can provide. The Perry Castaneda library map collection, if this is not on your reference hot list, it should be. One of the things they do is online maps of current interest. Now, notice you already have maps of the riots in France, maps of bird flu, maps of the bombings in India, earthquake maps, Hurricane Katrina maps, etc. You know, there's nothing that can illuminate the conflicts in the Middle East better than a set of historical maps that show you what people have been where over time. Okay, we supply trend data. We say, has this been done before? And if so, with what results? You will not find this in any newspaper or in most newspapers or magazines, but did you know that Britain, for instance, had already played its shot with privatizing Social Security, and now even the agency that is supposed to administer this private Social Security and the companies that are doing it are saying, well, actually, we're liable for supplying bad information, so how about you all go back and get back on the pensions, okay? Useful information for a public policy discussion, okay? We fill in all kinds of information that tends to get left out of the discussion. I read very widely in politics and news. I can count on the fingers of one hand the news accounts that have actually mentioned that Social Security is a provider of support for orphans and for people with disabilities. If you treat this just as a pension issue and then you screw over the pension funds, you're not just doing the elderly, who I'm taking a very personal interest in these days, out of their pensions, you're also going to be robbing widows and orphans, okay? And people with disabilities. We evaluate sources of conflicting data. Okay, here's a little news item, okay? Now there's genetic proof that it's not just men who have a wandering eye. At least 1 in 25 fathers, a new study finds, is unknowingly raising some other man's child. Okay. All right. Now, this is the point at which most of us would start smelling fish. We would say, how do you know that? Okay? Just like we would tend to question any wide survey that says that, say, 30% of the people in the United States pick their nose, okay? Because we're going to say, okay, who is going to say yes when asked that on a survey question, you know? Okay, now, where does this data come from? Scientists at Liverpool John Moores University collected the results of paternity tests collected since 1950 and found that about 4% of children were fathered by someone other than the man they believed to be dad. Do you see something a little suspect about that? I mean, who's going to go for a paternity test unless they already think there might be a little problem? Okay? So again, we supply that suspicious eye. One of the things that we can do when something really controversial comes along, like, say, footnote Fahrenheit 450, 9/11 comes along, this is a factual gloss on it. You could do the same sort of thing with almost any controversial documentary or book or whatever, and say, here are the facts and opinions, et cetera, on each side, okay? We add value to information in a variety of ways. We reformat it. How often do you actually end up putting your answers into spreadsheet form for your customers, because that's the most efficient way of displaying it for them? We can help them visualize information, and I think this is increasingly important because Stephen Abram, do you all know Stephen Abram? Okay, Stephen Abram is the funniest, most fascinating speaker that you will ever hear. Don't miss an opportunity to hear him. He spits out ideas like machine gun bullets, and you walk out of his presentations feeling kind of shell-shocked. But Stephen Abrams maintains that we are the last generation of the text-based, okay? The generations that are coming up are visualization-based and sound-based, okay? Therefore, we have to adapt to that to catch their attention effectively. The other reason you want to visualize information is that, quite frankly, most of us have a very dim sort of grasp of numbers. I mean, effectively, we can go about as far as our salary because we know how much that's going to get us. And then after that, it's just a bunch, okay? I want to show you the mega penny project, okay? So let's just do 1 million pennies. That's what 1 million pennies looks like. Let's do 1 billion pennies. People have no concept of the power law of numbers when you start going from million to billion to 10 billion or whatever, and when I say people, I am including our congressional representatives. 10 billion pennies. So the power of visualization to help us comprehend the incomprehensible. Let me show you something that OCLC did if you haven't seen it before, and I so much admire what OCLC is doing to try to keep libraries alive. They're supplying all kinds of marketing materials that we can use. Here's libraries as economic engines. We spend more money than retail video stores, pour more money into the economy than video stores, athletic footwear, etc. We circulate as much information every year, more information every year than Amazon sells, as much as FedEx sends out, etc. More people come to libraries than come to any of these entertainment destinations, etc. Now, putting them in that kind of form, that is something that you can take to your politicians. That is something that you flash in the eyes of people who say, well, we've got Google, we don't need libraries anymore, okay? I don't know if you've all seen what Cornell University did. Cornell University has gone to war against the publishers like Elsevier. Want to learn some hair-raising facts about your library, okay? For $12,495, you could buy this car, or you could buy the Journal of Applied Polymer Science, okay? And we are the fools who will actually go and buy the Journal of Applied Polymer Science, okay? Okay, in Maps. How many of you use Google Maps? All right. Then I'm not going to bother to demonstrate this to you. I will simply say that if you have not done so yet, go to Google Maps, input the address of your library, and then input restaurants nearby, and print off maps that you will then make copies of and distribute to your patrons of all the nearby restaurants that they could go to when they are there at your library. Staff might like it too. Here's a variety of cool uses of Google Maps. I'm not going to dwell on all of these because I'm already behind time. I'm just going to show you something fascinating about the ways in which pictures can distort perception. Now, we've all seen this map, okay? And according to that map, Democrats are hanging on by their fingernails on the fringes of real America, okay? The only thing is, of course, that all of those red states have basically more cows than people. And the cows do not vote, you know? All right. So here is that map if you did it as a population cartogram. Here it is by scaling the sizes of the states to be proportional to the number of electoral votes. But the fact is that electoral map ignores the entire concept of winner take all. The fact is there are Democrats in Texas, okay? There are even Democrats in Utah, although they're hard. You may have to take a magnifying glass with you to find them. But anyway, here, if you take election results by county, you have an entirely different perception of the results. This is the power of mapping, of thematic mapping. You need to be able to do that for people. We connect information, show relationships between data, okay? Some of the ways you can do that, concurrent visual timelines. Now this is something that I think classrooms should do. Do we have any school librarians here at all? Okay. I think the idea of putting up concurrent timelines throughout your library is a really interesting thing because our students have no grasp of anything that happened before television, okay? And they don't know what was related to what happened when, okay? Here's one example of a hyperhistory where let's take people, no, let's take events. All right. And let's take 1938 to 1945. Okay. Actually, that's not doing what I wanted it to do. One of these, and I'm not going to go try to track it down right now, but one of them actually allows you to see what people coexisted with each other, okay? So you have composers and artists and writers and historical events that are all going on at the same time. We all act like literature happened independent of anything else. It didn't. Literature has been influenced by physics. Literature has been influenced by wars. Literature has been influenced by any number of things, and you start to see some of these conceptual relationships with something like this. We do conceptual linking. Here we have something visualizing emergent communities of interest. And here's tracing a network in terms of who is interested in particular books. I did something similar to this, except I did not do it as a graphic. When I went through all of the blogs and traced when the new ALA website was introduced. I wanted to see how does information move amongst librarians about this, and who are the people who are influential in the dialogue. And so I tracked who was citing whom, when the comments were made. And of course, it won't surprise you to learn that Karen Schneider was probably the most significant influence in deciding that this stank to high heaven, and how specifically it stank to high heaven, okay? One of the things that you can do is, in addition to, if you have not put these links onto your search engines page, these are visual search engines. Do you know Grokr? Do you know Car2? Okay. This allows you to visualize your search results. Now, I always, whenever I do a search engine, I always do Mary Lane. This is, of course, ego surfing. But I don't do it solely for that reason, although I always find quite interesting things that way. I search it because, A, it's a weird name and I'm essentially the only one out there. But it's also because how many search topics can you put into a search engine where you know for a fact the absolute minimum number it must be able to retrieve, or it ain't doing its job, okay? If they don't catch all 800 plus pages that are on my website, they aren't doing their job. And this is not going to want to come up for me, so I don't have time. Well, maybe. I don't have time to wait around for it. What it does is it displays the information as connected circles, okay? And the circles have varying sizes. The circles represent categories within that broad topic, okay? And the size of the circles indicates the quantity of information you're going to find within each of those categories. You click on each of those circles then, and it will then subdivide further into more sets of circles and categories and so on. But the power of displaying it visually is very effective, more effective, I think, for students than just saying, okay, we've got these categories, which one do you want to click on? They're going to glom on to the visual representation of those categories more than they will on the straight one. We create information, tutorials. And there are some great ones here. Uncover the history of your house using primary resources on the web. Got to show you this one, the assignment calculator. Input the date you will begin the assignment, date the assignment is due, which is presumably November 8th. Subject area of the assignment, and then it will calculate the assignment schedule, the research schedule for you, things that you will have needed to do. We're not the only ones who do this. I like Reporter's Desktop because, first of all, they put a lot of their basic sources all together in one place. But they have a nifty thing that they do here called John Doe. Who is John Doe and where to get the paper on him? And this is how to find public documents on it. Now, because they are reporters and not librarians, this is actually significantly flawed because reporters do not realize that only 35% of public documents are, in fact, available on the web. Librarians know that, I'm sorry, but you've got to go to the courthouse. And that is another thing that makes us, we are critically important whenever it is a life or death matter or a legal matter, depends on your having the correct information. You may be aware of the case at Johns Hopkins where a student who was a person participating in a clinical trial died because the researcher who had set up the method that they were using for the experiment did a Medline search and did not realize that Medline starts at 1961, but the medical literature goes back before 1961. And therefore, this researcher actually missed all of the research that was published in the 1950s that showed that the chemical that he was using as what he believed to be a neutral chemical was in fact toxic. So when it absolutely has to be correct, that is really where we need to come into the picture. We don't, but we can create simulations. This is such a powerful tool for showing people how to manipulate and understand the data through manipulating it. I personally believe that nobody should be allowed to run for public office who has not spent 6 months playing SimCity. So you have things like a national budget simulation. I don't know if you noticed that at one of the exhibitors was doing a California budget simulation thing where you could input, I want to put more money into education. Now how are you going to balance the budget? And then it gives you various things that you can do to tinker with it. University of Iowa Hospitals has, and I don't know whether librarians are contributing to this or not. They should be, because there should be a component for searching the medical literature, but they do patient simulations. So they basically allow doctors in training to practice their diagnostic skills without having an opportunity to kill the patient. We do backgrounders. I don't think anybody's better at it than Grace York at University of Michigan Document Center. She has one here on the high school national debate topic, and she takes you through all the kinds of resources. I do not know what those eyeballs are doing there. It kind of drives me nuts, actually. BNA, the provider of all of those loose leaf services, ungodly expensive loose leaf services. Their librarian, Laura Gordon-Murnane, every week puts together a backgrounder. Well, I guess it's monthly now. And this is something she started doing for her company's reporters and editors. And she refers them to all of the pertinent documents and policy statements and information from various statistical sources and so on a wide variety of public policy topics. Recommendation systems. Have you ever seen, the Morton Grove Public Library actually calls its website the Webrary. And they house the Fiction L collection of book lists, which are wonderful. My favorite one being a list of books for manly men doing manly things manfully. Anyway, they allow people to construct a really quite detailed profile of their reading interests. They fill out this form, it gets digitized, and it is incorporated, I believe, into their selection software or acquisition software, so that when a book comes in that matches a reader's profile, the notification of that book is automatically sent to the patron. Okay? Wikis. I'm not real clear in my mind what we might do with wikis in terms of reference services, but I think this is something that has some possibilities for us, especially an internal wiki that might answer some of the questions that we have come up all the time. So a local wiki, reference wiki, might be a useful thing to do. We do interviews, oral history interviews. We do reviews of the literature, summaries of information. Here, for instance, and this is put together by Greg Notes. I don't know if you know him, where he simply goes through all of the search engines and compares their different features. Comparison charts are one of the things that are extremely useful for our patrons when they're trying to make decisions on things. So one of the things I tend to feed in if they're trying to decide what DVD player to buy, I will say DVD player, chart, comparison. And we will come up with that kind of thing. But we can construct that kind of thing ourselves. We conduct surveys. This is an interesting thing. Most of the research has concentrated on how people look for information in the first place, but this survey has looked into how people who have already found things keep them found. So it's a survey, and the results are posted here. Their preliminary results are how people store the information that they have decided is valuable. We construct databases. Tacoma Public Library does some absolutely brilliant work with their local history thing. They have the Pierce County Buildings Index, where they've taken all of the stuff that they've already digitized from the local newspaper, and they've tracked it by address, and they've combined that with all of the other historical information they have, photos, etc., all into one database to make it very easy for people to search the history of their home. They have constructed a ships and shipping index so that people can track their family who were sailors, etc. We continuously update information. El Dorado County, do we have anybody from El Dorado County here? So I can congratulate you on your What's Hot on the Internet site this week. Okay. You all know, of course, that Librarians Index to the Internet actually began as a feature of the Berkeley Public Library website. My neat new stuff I found this week on the net was originally part of my best information on the net. I took it with me when I quit my job. We can and should do RSS. This is one of those things that I do not do, but you should, okay? Kansas City Public Library, for instance, publishes a number of newsletters, and all of them are available by RSS feeds. Do I need to explain RSS feeds to anybody? Okay. People can buy software that basically allows them to subscribe to feeds of the... This is a great convenience to your patrons, and it's a way to spread information about things that are new and interesting at the library. One of the things I would actually recommend is this. Many of your individual web pages are of interest to specific patrons. So, business reference page, okay? If you put that into XML, that's the code language you have to use to make it accessible to an RSS system. If you put it into XML, every time you make a change to the business reference page, any of your business customers who have subscribed to that automatically know that you've made that change, which has an interesting side effect because it's saying, yes, we are so on top of things, we are putting new things in all the time, okay? It has a nice psychological effect. Finally, let's talk about marketing, all of the above. And yes, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to do this real quickly. But as a class, librarians suck at marketing, okay? Just want to establish that. And that is a real pity because we offer all of these wonderful things and only select people actually know that we do it, okay? What do these people have in common? Cecil Adams, who writes The Straight Dope. Slate's The Explainer. Can't find on Google.com. What all of those have in common is that these are people doing fundamentally reference work and they are not librarians. And I am saying, why? Why didn't we move into that slot? Well, we still can, okay? Look at Sarah Long, Chris Dodge, the street librarian, who writes for Utne Reader, Larry Freeman, who does a Stump the Librarian column. These are people who do go out and market themselves within the news media, answering people's questions. The fact is, answering people's questions is an interesting feature. Newspapers really like to have interesting features. Shoppers need them even more because shoppers have to provide at least a fig leaf of content to get you there to read the ads, okay? Go out and solicit a column where you can present yourself in your professional glory. How else do librarians market reference services wherever they are? If you are online, you can actually answer people's questions while you are online when something comes up. This happened in Metafilter. There's a question, was essentially a genealogy question, and a librarian stepped in and answered the question beautifully. Community challenges to stump the librarian. Some libraries do this as public events, okay? Special events, and I will say this, okay? And this is an opportunity. I've always said we're not really good at marketing our services to manly men doing manly things manfully, okay? I checked, and the number 1-800-BAR-BETS is not taken. The domains barbets.info and settlebarbets.info are not taken. This is a niche. I offer this information to any of you who would like to move in and fill it. It's a wonderful opportunity. Granted, they may be drunk when you actually answer their questions, but it is nonetheless an opportunity. Radio. And do not ignore the possibilities, not just of English language radio, but any of your local other multilingual media outlets. Iowa City Public Library actually has its own cable network. Many libraries have at least one cable access program. They might only have an hour a week. Check with your local cable network to see if you can get a time slot on the cable access network channel. Podcasts are another thing. And again, this is moving out into a prime market. This is where increasingly kids are getting their information. They take it with them on the go. Podcasts are a great way to get messages out. And I assume that at some point, is there, you must know, you do podcasting, right? You know podcasts? No? Okay. If they become interactive, that's even better in terms of as a reference tool, but as a tool for library marketing in general. It's a resource you really should exploit. And now I am through. Any questions?